It was 2000. The Giants coming off 2 losing seasons in a row, a struggling team, a team looking for an identity. It finds an identity. An old group on the offensive line, Kerry Collins at quarterback, Amani Toomer at wide receiver, and Lightning, Tiki Barber. The season 2000. This is Inside BBI live with John and Eric as we review the season 2000 with special guest Glen Parker. All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, is senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. But we are already going with the 4 boxes. We've got the historian himself, Mr. Larry Smith, also joining us, and we have a special guest. Former New York Giants offensive lineman, former NFL offensive lineman, a man who's played in 5 Super Bowls, Mr. Glen Parker. Glen, thank you so much for joining us on Inside BBI. How have you been since you finished in the NFL? I mean, you're on a lot of stuff.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, first of all, and I'm looking forward to this quite a bit. I've been great. When I retired at the end of that 2002 into 2003, I moved back to Tucson, Arizona to raise my family. At the time I retired, I had 2 children, but my wife was pregnant with twins and very far along. And so really went to raising them, but at the same time did work for NBC at 30 Rock right there. So I flew back and forth. I was always in the city working, as well as NBC Sports, and eventually became Pac-12, did some work for the Pac-12 network, and gave all that up just a few years ago. I'm now on board with the University of Arizona Foundation with their alumni outreach and engagement, getting out there with those guys. And so, yeah, but all 4 kids are now done with college and out. So it's just mom and I.
Nice. Well, as a parent of a number of children, but 3 of them being triplets, I do understand multiples. The triplets just graduated high school last week, so I'm with you there. So,
other than money, the hard part's done for you now.
Yeah, you would think. There's a lot of, they just pop back up. We have a lot of kids. Anyway, that being said, Glen, first off, I know we want to review the 2000 season, but I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about your career overall. And I know each of the guys have some. Eric, I know you. I'm going to let it go to you first. You were interested in asking a little bit about the coaches that Glen's played for.
Oh yeah, but before that, so it was funny that when we were setting this up, John contacted me and said, "Do you have any pictures of Glen? I've got access to a database where I can look at NFL pictures." So I entered Glen Parker, and I went, "I'll be damned, he played in Super Bowl 25." So again, I knew kind of in the back of my head your career was that long, but it just dawned on me that you were actually in Super Bowl 25 as a rookie. And I think, John, you had a question. And I think you found the answer to it.
I did find the answer. You were on the kick team on the last field goal. We won't bring it up beyond that. But you were on the field at that time. Great picture of. I'm not sure who you were blocking at the time. One of the Giants linebackers at the time. But
yeah,
it's amazing of just the length of your career and the fact that 1 Super Bowl. Playing the Giants, 1 Super Bowl with the Giants. But Eric, let's continue though.
What's interesting about that though too is so he was in a game where Lawrence Taylor was playing, and then fast forward 10 years later, Lawrence Taylor was on the sidelines in the NFC Championship game against the Vikings, cheering for Glen in the offense. So it's just like that, but that shows you how long Glen's career was. I mean, he had a really great career. The bulk of it was on those amazing, and Glen, just so you know, I'm from upstate New York, so I vividly remember those Buffalo teams. That talk about high scoring offense, and you were playing with a who's who of guys on offense and defense. The Jim Kellys of the world, and so that was just incredible. And then you go into Kansas City, and I think you were coached 2 years by Schottenheimer, and your last year was Gunther Cunningham. I think coached you was your last year, and then of course you come to the Giants. So. I just wanted first to just congratulate on the length of your career. To have that long a career and to play with the coaches that you played for, that's just amazing.
Well, thank you. It's funny. I went into it and you just want to make it, a couple of years. And my agent asked me at the time when I got in, what do you want out of this? And so for people who don't know, I didn't play high school football. I was a surfer. Beach volleyball, basketball at the courts, but football, I just wasn't mature enough as a young man to put that type of time and effort into something. And so my agent asked me, "What do you want out of this gig, man? You've only played at that point, going into my rookie year, I'd only played 28 football games, and ended up starting my first 4 or 5 games for the Bills, and then got hurt a little bit and kind of subbed in and out for the rest of the year." I said, I just want enough to buy a condo at Huntington Beach and surf the rest of my life, man. And he was absolutely stunned by that. He goes, "Never heard that in my life." I was too naive to know any better. And so I didn't have bad habits, but I also didn't have any glorious dreams. And as it moved along, my wife said to me, 10 years, you think maybe we're done? I said, no, I think 10 years is too round a number. I always felt like guys who did it 12 had a career. So I played 2 more, and I probably would have kept playing except for Mr. Mara, what he did for me and how he took care of me. It was time for me to go.
And that was just, so we've got a lot of listeners that are old guys like us. We've got listeners that are younger and probably don't really remember the 2000 Giants. But to set this up sort of, John, I think we should probably just briefly mention that fact that the sort of the state of the Giants. Fossil comes in '97, and that was a surprise season. Right. And there were 2 sort of mediocre years where we're going through quarterbacks. So we go from Dave Brown, we go to Danny Cannell, we go to Kent Graham, and then sort of midway or towards the end of '99, Kerry Collins takes over. And one of the things that they do in that offseason is they want to revamp the offensive line. So they bring in Glenn, they bring in Lomas Brown, right, and Dusty Ziegler. And I think they shifted Luke Pettigrew from guard to tackle. And of course, Ron Stone, who still I think is really an underappreciated Giant to this day. I think Ron Stone had a tremendous career with the Giants. But they formed the basis of and Giants fans in the last decade, we all know the struggles of a bad offensive line. It was a blessing to get Glenn and Lomas Brown and Dusty in here in this sort of shore up that offensive line, because right, it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Glenn, and it was a surprise to a lot of folks. I mean, for you guys to gel being so, hadn't played a big history together.
Yeah, I think people didn't realize Dusty and I had been together at the Bills for 1 year or maybe just a preseason, but I think it was 1 year. But Lomas and I were the same. We were very old together. Mm-hmm. And so for what people who aren't really inside the game in the NFL don't realize, they hear all about language. But when you get to a certain age, it's not as much about language as it is about understanding the guy next to you is on the same page. So it was very simple early on with Lomas and I, and Dusty and I communicated well. So Dusty could concentrate a lot on communicating to the right side with Ron and Luke, and not so much on Lomas and I, because we already knew. We knew where things were going to be. We were, and so that's a big part of the being able to come right in, being able to gel. The biggest part was just some of the things we did as older guys that got guys involved and made it more fun for everybody.
So one of the things I wanted to ask about is, like, obviously when you bring experience, I'll say, when you bring experience brings a lot of mileage and other stuff. That Giant season was really a surprise when you started the preseason to go all the way to the Super Bowl. How did you guys manage to stay together for the bulk of the year? I mean, there were a few here or there, but you didn't lose people for like 7, 8, 9 games. You guys played together, and you were an older group. How did you manage to stay together for the bulk of the season?
Well, first and foremost, between Jim Fossil and Sean Payton, and of course the O-line coach McNally, who was a legend. He took care to rest Lomas and I as much as we needed. We didn't abuse it. There was never a time he abused it. But hey, when you're getting to a certain age and you've played a lot of games, and honestly, guard is much worse on your body than tackle. And I had played a lot of games at tackle, but it was guard where I got beat up. And he was very good about it. If I came in and said, "Man, I'm hurting," he'd say, why don't you take a day? Take the day. And that was during camp and whatnot. And so and Lomas did it, and he allowed us to treat ourselves, because Ronnie Barnes also, I think, is the most underappreciated New York Giant coach, trainer, front office guy in the last, probably in the history of the Giants. He is a class above every trainer I ever had. He truly cares about the players. He does not care about his job. He cares about doing his job for the players, and that's important. Too many guys answer to the boss. He answers to the players, and that was really refreshing to know a guy was in your corner as much as he was. So that's the physical side of how we got through it. Now the mental side, there were a lot of things that went into that, and reasons I was brought in and Lomas was brought in, and we can get into that at some point if you like. But the physical side is because they treated us as men who were capable of being ready for a game without practicing hard every day, and they listened to us and they cared about us being healthy for Sunday, not for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Nice. Larry, I know you, because before we address portions of the season and then get later on, you had some questions around, some of the guys that we're talking about the offensive line, but the guys that they kind of went against. So I want to give you a chance to ask those questions.
Yeah. My question is, just kind of leading up, during the 98 and 99 seasons, the Giant offense, there were struggles. Quarterback was unsettled. The offensive line was shaky. They brought you guys in for stability and particularly leadership, because there was an incident in the middle or kind of late in 1999 after I think it was a loss at Washington, where Jesse Armstead in the locker room really just ripped into the offense for not holding up their end. And I don't know what words were said, but he, basically called out their manhood and they're not leaders and they're carrying you. He did. And so lining up against those guys in training camp and leading up to the season, and particularly I think you were probably lining up a lot against Keith Hamilton, who had a really probably his best season in 2000. What was it like going against guys like Strahan and Armstead and Keith Hamilton every day in training camp?
It starts the first week, and it starts because and I'm actually going to go back to my free agent trip there. I had actually been in Las Vegas with my wife. They brought me in and talked to me about coming in, and we needed to change our personality. That's what they talked about. They were very adamant about changing the personality of the offense. And when I got there, I had been on great teams. Now, I had been on great Bills teams, but people forget we were 13-3 with the Chiefs. I had been MVP of the Chiefs in '98. I saw different ways of doing things throughout the course of those, 10 years I had been in the league, and I knew things that needed to be done. And number one is you never let a defensive guy push you around, ever. And it didn't mean that we didn't like each other. Matter of fact, I'm still friends with almost everybody on that defense. I still talk with them occasionally. I still like them. We were never not friends, but in order to have a working relationship with respect, you can't take anything. And right off the bat in camp, it might have been day one or two, there's a fight and I'm jumping in. I'm flying in there. And I'm pissed at my guys who aren't flying in there, and I'm letting them know it. And it's amazing how fast, if one guy does it, the other guys feel good about it. But, when you're a younger offensive line and you don't have that older guy doing that, you hang back. There was no hanging back. I was showing him you got to get in. When there was mouthing off on the defense, if we had a double team, me and Lomas, we were going to finish that double team. We were going to take that guy to the ground if we could, including Keith, and never want to hurt anybody, especially a teammate, for God's sakes. But we're going to try to bury him. That's what we want to do. And those type of things, the physical nature. But then there's a lot. That's how you get your personality as far as being who you have to be on the field. But there's a lot more to it, and that really came in our meetings and things we started doing, not just meeting-wise, but in practice where you're not going against the defense, where too many guys practice to get through it. They don't practice with a purpose, things like that, And so, and a simple, stupid one that I started doing right off the bat because we had done it at Kansas City. You get done with your stretch, you get done with individual, and now you're going to run and you're going to have a little team drill that's pretty much a walkthrough, but it's team. Mm-hmm. That whistle's blown. Every group on the field is in a disparate place other than the quarterbacks and running backs. They're right in the middle. Well, I'd yell I don't care. Dusty, whatever lineman was right to me, I'd yell his name and tell him I was beating him to the ball. And it only took a couple of weeks, and soon every lineman was sprinting to that ball to get there first compared to the other guys. And then it turned into everybody on offense trying to get there, to be the first one to get there. It sounds so stupid, but it's things like that that build that esprit de corps, that everybody's pulling the rope the same way. We're all rowing the boat the same place. And that is what was missing in my mind, were some of those things. And there's others, meetings we put in, and they got kind of famous because we had a lot of guys like to drink beer and eat pizza on Fridays, which hadn't been done there. Because listen, you guys have been there. Nobody on a Friday wants to stay around the facility longer than they have to.
Right.
When I got there, guys would, hey, it's 12. We're done at 1 or 2. Hey, we're out of here. No, we're not. We're going to watch film. The rookies are going to fill a nice chest full of beer and order pizza. And it went from 7 or 8 linemen. By the middle of that year in our playoff run, we had every single guy on offense and even a bunch of defensive guys in that meeting, waiting and watching and talking it through, getting, having Kerry Collins see what the formation of the personnel was and call one of our plays. And we all talk about how we would block this and what we would do and how are the routes. That is the things you have to, I kind of put in and we instituted in order to get that personality back to the offense where we could combat the defense at least somewhat evenly. I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
No. That's actually
that's gold. No.
Something very specific that you said that I want to ask you, because I've brought this up and I've heard a few other Giant fans bring it up. If I were to show a highlight to you and you didn't know the records of the teams or whatever, and you saw a quarterback get kind of drilled a little bit late, and his offensive linemen just kind of stand around, don't do anything, is that a winning team?
No, it's not. They have no. Number one, it's that we go back to that esprit de corps. Number two, it's having each other's backs and holding each other accountable. You could tell they weren't being held accountable, and Jesse did the right thing, trying to hold them accountable. Somebody on offense wasn't doing it. The coaches probably weren't. They weren't doing it. Although coaches can only do so much, it's more up to the players in those situations. The players weren't doing it. Jesse did it. It needed to be done, and that's the thing that you have to have, and that we tried to instill between Lomas, myself, Dusty, and other guys that came along with that team.
So we had Richie Stoiber on an earlier show, and he said the same thing that you did. He said he was a big fan of Jim McNally. So it sounds like you were too, as the offense.
Yeah, and Richie's one of my favorite people on the planet, by the way. We still talk occasionally, and really like that guy. He was he was a rookie, young kid coming in, wide-eyed, learning. But Jim McNally is a legend in the business. I was very lucky to have 3 good offensive line coaches. They're all a little different, but legends, all of them. It's Jim is a guy that understood. Number one, he was very good at communicating with his guys, but number two, he was very good, as I said, not just the physical get us rest, but he understood what he didn't have to coach us on something. And I'll tell you, we get there and it's, we got those OTAs, but they weren't called OTAs. We just, we had a week or 2 weeks and we do our stuff, and he's drawing everything on the board, and he gets us in our stance, and he goes, all right, let's go. And he has the defense, and I had Lomas next to me. I said, Lolo. He goes, yep. Okay. We did our block. And he loses his mind. I'm not allowed to say any of the things he said on this podcast. Losing his mind. And he goes, I didn't hear a word. I said Lolo. And he said, yeah. And he goes, well, what the hell? I go, well, coach. And he goes, that's right. You guys have done this a long time. He goes, okay, just do me a favor. Make the calls so the young guys think I'm coaching. So I was like, okay, we got to make the call. So, me being a smart ass, but wanting to have a little fun with it, I waited till team drill. Now we're in team drill, and Kerry's in the middle of his cadence, and I'm down there, and I'm like, hey, Lomas, hey, we got a Liz here, but we might have to have a Larry and watch for the Tom. Now, the Tom is a stunt with the end and backer, coming in the middle. And I said, now, the way that Tom is lined up, 53 here, the way he's lined up tells me it could be a Tom. But we got to do Liz Larry first. Now, if we pay attention to the safeties here, And everybody's just watching me go on. And I'm communicating. I said, now, hey, it's going to be up to Dusty eventually, Lolo, as we know. And I'm going on, and finally, McNally goes, Fossil's just, he's fuming, and then he just starts laughing. And McNally says, okay, you proved your point. You proved your point.
Well, but that was a big thing for us guys that remember this time period very vividly. And again, we're old guys, so we even remember the 80s and the 70s. So, but you brought a sense, you and Lomas and Dusty brought a sense of competency to the line, and you could see that as a fan. So it wasn't just the play; it was just everything more settled. Things settled down on the offensive line, and because it settled down on the offensive line, it settled all over the offense. So you guys were just you were huge additions, and I think all of us picked up on it as fans at the time.
Well, thank you. A lot of that credit obviously is McNally. It's also Sean Payton having offense that allowed us to do that. It wasn't just me or Lomas or Dusty. It's all of us. We couldn't have got it done without Ron Stone and Luke Pettigrew being on board and listening and doing all the things they needed to do. And finally, a guy like Kerry Collins was there, new at that point. And so there were a lot of guys that we just kind of, I think it started in that off season and it just kept going where we were going to all be in this boat and we're going to make sure it's going in the same direction. There's an old Navy SEAL thing. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And I think that's what was lacking on that offense. Just needed leaders. It just needed some people who bring other guys around and uplift them. Because, a guy yelling at people is not a leader. A guy who's a leader creates other leaders. And that's what you're trying to do is create a sense that everybody on that team has something involved and we're all leaders. So when it's your time to shine, you're going to shine. I mean, don't forget, we had a rookie tight end. We had Howard Cross, of course, but we had a rookie tight end who contributed a ton by the name of Dan Campbell.
Right.
I think he was a rookie that might have been a second-year guy. He and I still hedged back and forth. And, that guy was solid. Cross was solid. They got a lot of guys that were solid players. They just needed that group on the line to be the guys. And that's true of every NFL team. No NFL teams wins with a bad offensive line. It's never going to happen.
And knowing Dan Campbell, because it's funny that you brought him up. I was just about to ask you, being that he was on that team, is he a guy that you could have seen down the road? Hey, this guy could be a really good coach.
Well, I didn't get to know him in that respect, just as a player.
Sure.
Hard-nosed, understood what you immediately saw from him was work ethic, passion. He had both, but he also had a way he could separate that emotion, the field from everywhere else. And that's sometimes what I think goes unnoticed with so many players is a guy who is always on, like moving forward, always got to do the right thing, always got to be involved in football. He eats, sleeps, breathes it. Probably not the guy that you're going to count on for 16 weeks. He's going to burn out, man. I know there's a lot of guys that say they do it, but they got something else. My whole thing was I didn't bring work home with me ever. If I had to stay 2 extra hours in that stadium and miss seeing my kids go to bed, I did it because I did not want to bring it home to them. Didn't want to bring it home to my wife. My wife would be the first one to tell you, by Wednesday, she doesn't want me in the house because the stress level's getting high. By Saturday, for God's sake, she doesn't want me anywhere near her. She wants me somewhere long way away. So it's the guys who do that all the time, I think, struggle. They really do.
Right.
So
that was a tangent. I apologize.
No. Actually, it's a much better. I like the insight because we're fans of that. We see it from the outside, and I think I will say for myself, I'll just speak. I think I know football pretty well, but I don't know what you know. I don't know the locker room feel. I don't know the thought that goes in it. I'm not doing the data. To hear that piece of it gives us a perspective that we don't have from just watching the games. So. Right. If we turn our attention kind of now a little bit to the 2000 season, before you left camp, did you, and I know you can't speak for everybody, but just from you, what were your feelings going in? What did you think the season was going to be before it actually started? So right at the end of preseason, what were you thinking?
I will be the first to tell you I'm going to be just like every other guy. I never look at seasons.
Okay.
I look at the games. At the most, I might look at, okay, we got 4 games. How are we going to attack these 4 games? Because once you get older in the NFL, once you've been there a long time, you start realizing, yeah, it's next week. And that's how you keep the young guys, the guys who might be prone to losing focus. You keep them focused by one game. But once you get to a certain level in football where you've played a ton of NFL football and you know you're settled, you actually start looking ahead through 3 games ahead of the one you got coming. Not looking ahead like, oh, I can't wait to play them. None of that. But you start realizing everything you're putting into the playbook today has an effect on the next 3 games because film makes its way around the league every 4 weeks. It gets through. That's why if you're not changing and implementing newer formations, personnel groups and plays, just weird stuff occasionally when you can to keep that film fresh, to keep it so it gets the defenses down the line something to think about. So my main thing is I never looked at the whole season. And even most of the time I didn't even look ahead more than a couple games, but I did always know, all right, these are the things we're putting in for them down the road.
Right.
I know this because I've been around long enough. I've played that team a million times. I know what they're looking for. So I know Sean's putting this in now. So they have to practice against this crap for, we might never run any of this, but we want them wasting time practicing against it and all that. So you're doing those things. But the main thing is I have never once gone into a season thinking I wasn't going to win a Super Bowl. I don't think you can as a player. I think if you do, you're not a very good player and you haven't been around the league very long and you're not going to be a great player. You're going to be a guy who's in and out of the league for a cup of coffee because you have to believe your teammates are the best players out there. And you have to believe your coaches have the best game plan. And you have to believe those things or else you can't play that game. It's impossible. There have been times where as a player with other players, we went to the OC and said, hey, they're calling every play out. We haven't changed anything the last few weeks. And oh no, that's not true, blah, blah. And you're sitting there going, all right, we go in the huddle and we might call a screen right. We come out and they're like, screen left. We're like, oh God, here we go. They know right where, you're like, this is great. They're calling the exact play. So so I always believed I was going to win a Super Bowl. And I don't think there's any way to get there unless you do. I really didn't. And matter of fact, I was asked by the media after that training camp. They said it was, coming out. What do you guys think? How many wins do you think? I'm like, we got the talent to go to the Super Bowl. And then they reminded me I had said that when we got to the Super Bowl. I said, well, you better believe that or you're not going to get to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And we don't want to go game by game because we'll be here. We'll be here all night. But there are certain games.
I don't know if I can remember every game, guys.
I know. That's fine.
It's funny that you said that when we were on. I was talking to Larry earlier. There's one of the games on the schedule where the Giants lost at home against the Redskins in 2000, and I said to Larry, I said, I don't even remember that game. I said
that was early in the year, I think.
I blocked that out of my memory.
You're the bad one.
but I do want to highlight certain games, and one of the early ones was the Giants beat the Cardinals in the opener. And again, from a Giants fan perspective, I know you don't think that, but we're thinking it's the Cardinals, even the lowly Giants during this time period. We beat up on the Cardinals, so it was nice to win, but it's no big deal. I don't know if people remember, but in week 1, Dallas lost badly to the Eagles. The Eagles crushed Dallas. And so the Giants are going into Philadelphia at week 2 when I want to set up Larry, because Larry, you were at that game, right?
I was. I took the road trip to Philadelphia. And I lived.
I hope you took the train. You didn't park there, did you?
I did. I wore my Giants jersey. I wore my blue Giants hat, and I took a ton of shit from those animals. And all the Eagle fans were so juiced because they beat Dallas something crazy. It was like 44 to 14. They ran for over 300 yards. Deuce Staley had a 200-yard game, and the whole thing was hot in Dallas. And
was
like
that the pickle juice? That's the
pickle juice.
Yes.
And all these Eagle fans are wearing pickle juice T-shirts, and they're just I'm getting stuff thrown at me. I sat in the 600 level in the upper deck at Old Veterans Stadium, and
that place.
But thank God you guys backed me up, and that was a really close game up until just before half. It was only 6-3. You guys were moving the ball well between the 20s. You ended up settling for 3. And then I think it was the first touchdown pass Collins hit Toomer in the corner of the end zone. He got behind the safeties. The defense forced a 3-and-out, and the Eagles shanked a punt, and the Giants got the ball with under a minute left inside the 50. And then on a draw play, Tiki Barber made a cut, ran around the corner, and all of a sudden it's a blowout before halftime. It was fantastic. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and I want to highlight that game because that was a shocking win, I think, at least for me. I don't want to speak for you guys.
The Giants were underdogs, and all of a sudden the Eagles are on the hype train. They're the team of the week. They beat Dallas because nobody realized Dallas wasn't good, and it was, the Giants just went down there. And, looking back 25 years later, the Giants beating the Eagles in Philadelphia, that's a rare thing. It hasn't happened many times since.
Yeah, believe it or not, that's one game I do remember. You hate playing in Philly, you hate the fans, the trip down, everything about it. But yeah, I do remember that game. That was Hugh. Why can't I think of the defensive end's name? Hugh. He's a great guy. Hugh Douglas, great guy. But I did a lot of study on him. I wasn't going to play him much. I had Hollis, big Hollis, forget his name, but yeah, giant. Huge human being, but I wasn't worried about his pass. I was worried about Hugh's pass because we're going to, obviously we're going to do some sliding. And when we slide, what are we to do? And I watched. I went to Lomas. I said, Lomas, we got a real tell. We got him. And he goes, and he looks at me and goes, I think so. And what we had decided, we watched enough of it together. Hugh came out of his stance in a jump, both feet off the ground. So if we didn't set back, we just set to him. We'd catch him in the middle of it every time. And then he'd stop his feet and we had him. And sure enough, I don't think he had any pressures that game. He had nothing. Lomas locked him down, or I did, whoever was on him, and it was that was a real moment that I remember well because Lomas and I did a lot of extra on that guy because, hey, he's the guy that's been he's getting on people, man. He's doing it, and he hated playing us after that. I don't think he ever figured out what we were doing to him. But that you're very brave to go down there. I told my wife, you're not going to any Eagles game ever. You're not going down there.
Yeah, and I did some scanning of game summaries, and there was a very, very good quote after this game. I think it was the Bergen Record, where Michael Barrows said he said a good offense makes for a great defense. And Kerry Collins kind of piggybacked on that, and he said, one thing we didn't do in 1999 was when we had a lead in the second half, we didn't sustain drives, we didn't eat enough clock, and the defense just kept going back out there and they would get worn down. So he took a lot of pride in the fact that you guys did a really good job. I think your time of possession for this game was like 36 minutes or something. But you guys, after the scoring blast at the end of the second quarter, it was just long drives, eat up clock, keep the defense fresh.
Yeah, and that credit then obviously goes to Sean Payton. He's a brilliant coach, still is, and he understood the assignment one, but he also has a great feel for play calling, when and where and how. It's been proven. He's won a Super Bowl. He's been in another. I wouldn't put it past him getting one at Denver if he gets the right pieces. That's a huge part of it too. And then lastly, hey, it's guys willing to fight hard for the extra yard. It's guys willing to hold that block a little longer. That's what goes into it. That's that esprit de corps we talk about.
And so they start off. Yeah, we should move this along. But so, John, you want to talk just that they were 3-0, right? And
and then we have a little bit of a lull. You guys then come back, win a few more games. Then there's some really kind of I don't want to say blowout, but you certainly got handled 2 weeks in a row. And what I'm curious, and Eric, I'm gonna tee you up because you mentioned this first. So we're heading into Arizona. And there's a very infamous piece. So or famous. I don't say infamous. It's not bad. It's famous. Yeah. Eric, go ahead and lead in with that piece of it there, because we're interested not just in what happened, but what did the players think of it. So go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. Well, so the story, and everyone always talks about it. So we're going to put our chips in the middle of the table quote. And I remember as a fan, hearing that at first, and I thought it was kind of cringe-worthy. I thought it sounded at the time, it sounded a little bit desperate because, again, you had only been there since the offseason. As Giants fans, we sort of had a sense that Fossil was always since his rookie year was kind of teetering on the brink, and it felt like even though the Giants were I think they were 7-5 at this point. You can correct me if I've got that wrong. 7-4. You're still in great shape. You're still in great shape. It just feels, for some reason, because it was Detroit and it was the Rams, and and so he comes out and he has this, we're going to move our chips to the middle of the table. I've always wondered in the locker room, did you guys think of that as like, man, he's got our back, this is awesome? Or did you wonder what is this all about? I was always curious, what was your initial take on all of that?
Okay, in all honesty, until we got to the Super Bowl, I had not heard that quote. Really? I never paid much attention to anything anybody said about it. As I said, I went home, football was done for me. I'd watch a Monday night game. I'm going to watch Sunday night. I'm going to watch a game if it's on, but I'm not paying attention to any football news. I'm watching Lion King with my daughter. I honestly, and so my response is, I understand why. I remember that season well. We had beat the Eagles, and people were like, okay, that's a good win. And the Eagles turned out to make the playoffs. We beat them again in the playoffs. But what it was is, I think there was a lot of questions to how good our team was. Yeah, we were 7-4. But we had beat every team we should have beat and had lost every team we probably should have lost to. And that's not how you win titles.
Right.
If you're going to win, you have to win the ones you're supposed to win. You have to win your home games. You have to win your conference games, and you got to steal some games against better teams. That's how you get there. And we hadn't done that. We won the ones we were supposed to do. I don't think we had stolen a game from anybody. I don't think we had not really, we lost to teams that were better than us probably. So we needed to up our game. And I know that's why he did it, because he needed us, the guys that were listening, to up the game, say, hey, we got to win some of these games, and probably his coaching staff and himself. He probably, as a way of holding himself more accountable, that we got to win some games down the stretch here to get ourselves in a position for the playoff run. And that's probably more to it than anything. As I said, once we got to the Super Bowl, I kept hearing that quote. I went, wow, don't remember that one at all. But again, that was me.
And so obviously it wasn't like a thing in the locker room either, because you would have heard it in the locker room too. So no one would know. Yeah,
I don't remember it being a thing at all. I really don't until
that's so interesting. Okay, the other thing, I don't want to paper over it too fast, but the important thing too is before those two losses that made you 7-4, you did beat the Eagles again. So and it's important because this is building a theme that goes ends up in the playoffs. And just real quick. So did Hollis still not learn his lesson? Were you guys still taking advantage of that?
You didn't learn for the next year either. The next year we had him too. But I will tell you, Hugh, first off, a great player. Yeah. Take nothing from him. He just didn't pick that up. Right. But one of the better humans I've been around. I mean, it's when I was around him. There was no animosity between our teams. I knew a lot of those guys. I'd see them now and then, at subsequent events. Great guys, but hey, the city.
Yeah, been there. Yep.
Different thing, but yeah, no, he never caught on. Yeah, those, and you really think about it. We had beaten the Eagles. We had beaten Dallas. We had beaten the Cardinals, but when you're talking about the other teams, we just hadn't done it. And so I think that was a way of holding himself accountable. And then we went on that run, that improbable run for ourselves.
So, and that sets up, and John, that sets up the run with the rest of the regular season too. So they win, what is it, 4 in a row, 5 in a row here?
Yeah, you finished 12. You finished 12
5 in a row. And to me, and Larry, I'd love to hear from you and John. To me, it seemed like the last two they were all important, but it seemed like the last two division games were really big. The 9-7 one in Washington.
That was the win.
That was a real battle. And then, of course, the one in Dallas where Tiki broke his arm. Those were touch and go games, but those were real big games, I thought, to me.
Yeah, the Dallas one, I had been hurt, I believe against Pittsburgh the week before. I had surgery on Tuesday, but I wanted to play. I was ready. I had surgery Tuesday. I'm like ready. And they're like, we don't want you to, don't want you to. You know, it's amazing me now. Some guy gets a scope, they take some meniscus out, and he's out for a month and a half. I'm like, I never missed more than one game with a scope. What is this? You know, we're so far along now. You're like, well, shouldn't it be like 3 days now? I mean, like these guys now, they're returning from injuries so fast, but apparently meniscus has gotten worse. I don't know how that's possible. So yeah, I missed that game. They held me out. I was ready. I was bummed to miss it, but we did go down to Dallas. We did beat them. It was a great game for us. And then trying to think, and the Washington game, that was at Washington too. And I remember I knocked Bruce Smith, I think, out of that game. He made an inside move on Lomas, spun under, and I popped him hard. You know, and Lomas and Bruce and I had a history going all the way back to my rookie year, so I didn't mind.
Oh,
I didn't want him injured, but I did want him hurt.
That's the old line from the program. Are you hurt?
What's
or are you
the difference
injured?
between the two?
Hey, that's the best pass rush. He's the best defensive end, not just pass rusher. And I played against Reggie. Reggie was very good. Reggie would not scare me as much as Bruce Smith, and that is not because he was my teammate. As a matter of fact, he and I have repaired our relationship. He and I did not get along for many years. I say that because I'm capable of putting all that aside and watching him play the run, watching him move inside, outside, both sides, watching him have balance like nobody else. You know, people love the strength of Reggie, but Bruce was strong. Bruce just happened to be fast. Bruce also happened to have great leverage, long arms, long legs. He was the best. And so getting him out of those games, if you could get him out, you had to try to get him out. He was too good. He would embarrass you.
And you battled injuries. I didn't realize that until I looked at the old media guide. You were battling some injuries in 2000. So you had a calf at one point. You had a knee at one point. And
I tore a calf muscle, probably due to dehydration. You know, being on creatine, and you have to really make sure you're hydrating when you're on creatine. And then and that was one game. I think that was St. Louis I missed. And then I hurt my knee against Pittsburgh, so I missed the Dallas game.
Yeah, because guys now, if they have a calf injury, that seems like they're out a month.
They're done.
You know.
Once again, what do you? Yeah. Well, these guys. I mean, honestly, think about it though. These guys have huge contracts. They've already got the guaranteed money. It's not like back then. You could lose your job real easy. These guys aren't losing their job now because the way the salary cap works. The only people who aren't starters aren't making any money, so they're paying the starters. It's a different dynamic. God bless them. I mean, we built it for them. They're continuing that effort. But it is certainly not as physical or as desperate as it was.
So now we're kind of finishing the season. There was a tight game at the end with Jacksonville. You guys were winning kind of most of the game, but it still stayed tight all the way to the end. You finished the season though. You're 12-4. And now you see, like you said, I'm pretty sure you're not looking ahead of like, oh, if we beat these guys, we're going to go here. You're looking at who we get next, and Philadelphia is the next team on the schedule. You've already played them twice. The old adage is it's really hard to beat a team 3 times. The Giants have done it a couple of times when they've in their playoff runs in the past, but it's not easy to do. So thoughts on heading into that Philadelphia game, which was probably one of the loudest I've ever heard Giant Stadium.
You know, we had heard all of the beating a team 3 times in a row, you know, and that's in your own mind. Of course, you're always thinking that, but we knew we were better than them because we were inexperienced the first time we beat them, and we kind of really took it to them. They had played us tougher that second game, but we were in their home and we beat them. Mm-hmm. So we felt good being at home, playoffs, playing them. And I'm not lying at all when I tell you this. As an offense, we knew Sean Payton was going to have a good plan. We were going to have a plan. We were going to get it done. We never questioned our defense. Our defense is great. But we knew, all right, we're going to have a plan for this. And it was a tough game. And is that, I think, did Dixon have a return for a touchdown?
Started the game.
Kind of broke it wide open immediately. It was just like, you know, that was the stress reliever. Also, like, we're in a game, let's go, and it just made it easy on us after that. And it sounds odd, but it really works that way.
We can even play that way.
The Eagles kick off. They have an outstanding record when they lose the toss, which they did because they're kicking off. This is Ron Dixon with some room, and Dixon can fly away from Akers, and he's gone. He's not going to be stopped by anybody. What a way to open up.
As John said, the crowd from the initial stages.
I was there waving my towel. He ran it back to my end zone. Right, this is where I sat in Giant Stadium.
Outstanding, love it.
Yeah.
I love that thing. You know, in that highlight, real quick, it's the oddest thing I know when I say this, because there's so many other people I can pick. One of the most hated Eagles of all time, David Akers. That dude, I hated that guy.
It's really hard to hate a kicker too, but
he
share
just
that
managed to do it. Like
I got to tell you, I pretty much hate every kicker. They have the life of Riley, man. Kickers and punters, I can't get behind them. Always good guys, but no, not my friend. Yeah, Akers though. Akers, you guys might not know this, outstanding jiu-jitsu player. So when I was with, and just an aside, while I was working with NBC, I got big into jiu-jitsu for all the right after I retired because I needed something. And he was very active at Philly, and he would train the same place I trained, but he was on a different schedule because I was there for weekends and whatnot, and he wasn't around. But once in a I'd hear about him from the black belts and say they loved him, great guy. Of course, they were all Philly fans, but that's the way it goes. Because I was, believe it or not, I was working at NBC, but I was also working down at NFL Films on certain days. So
nice.
I had a gym down there full of Philly fans that never knew who I was until about the last half a year I was there. And they went, wait a minute. But they all turned out pretty good guys.
That's awesome.
So Larry, you're at that game too, obviously.
I was.
You have any questions about that too? Of course, there's the Seahorn play that we haven't talked about.
Well, if you don't mind, I could take a moment to incriminate myself. I missed the Seahorn interception because that was just Glenn's shaking his head. He's disappointed with me, but
I am.
Just before the 2-minute warning, and I'm tailgating all day. I'm drinking beers. I'm like, I'm going to beat the halftime rush for the men's room. So just before the 2-minute warning, I'm like, I'll be right back. I'm not going to miss anything. And I'm in the men's room, and I hear this big roar, and I turn to the guy next to me. I'm like, oh, so the Giants must have gotten a sack. And then I come back out, and everybody's like looking, oh my God, you missed it. And they're showing the replay on the scoreboard. I'm like, I'm never gonna run to the men's room until halftime. I missed it.
Listen, and I've said this for years. I think it may be the singular most athletic play.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
I mean, Saquon Barkley's backwards jump is great, but that's within the form of the play. But to make a play on a ball, roll on your back, see the ball in the air, pick it up, have the wherewithal not to go out of bounds, not to get touched, and to get up and go. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
He picked up his back knee before he got touched. It would have been whistled dead.
Right. Yeah. It's an unreal play. I told him so that day, and I saw him about a year ago down here in Arizona. We talked, and I was like, man, still, that play blew my mind to this day. It's like, wow. You don't see that type of thing very often.
And Larry, an opportunity that got completely pissed away.
Yeah,
literally.
Anyway.
I've seen the replay a million times.
But for all intents and purposes, as long as you guys didn't screw up on offense that day, and this is no slight against you, but between the special teams touchdown and Seahorn, and the defense was just tormented the Eagles that day.
Yeah, McNabb was,
and who was the right tackle? Was it Runyon then? Who was the right
Runyon.
tackle?
I believe it was Runyon.
Yeah, Runyon was getting it, and he was a fantastic player, but Runyon was getting abused. And so you guys, not that you took the day off, but you guys didn't have to do too much that day.
Yeah, those are the best games, right? Yeah, I love when the special team scores. Hey, we're not on the field, sweet. Let's go watch the defense work. Defense gets interception. Hey, great. This is all good for us. Field position's always pretty good. It's easy at that point, right? Those are the games you love as an offensive lineman. You're never the ones you hate where you're every time you get the ball, you're on inside your own 5, going out.
Right.
And you're on the road and you're down 3 scores. That's always a lot of fun. But those type of games, you live for them as an offensive player. All you have to do is hold serve, and you're in great shape. And that's the type of thing our coaching staff put together that year for us. Great defense that did that for us. That when we weren't at our best, they took up the slack because they knew through the course of the year we had taken up the slack for them.
Right.
And that's and we had helped them have great games. So there was a mutual respect between the two. So it wasn't like anybody felt bad one way or the other. special teams, just was all year long were fantastic.
That was the difference between the 2000 Giants and the 99 Giants. You guys played complementary football.
Right.
When the offense was having a slow day, the defense picked it up, or the special teams. And when the defense was off, you guys, threw the ball and put a lot of points on the board. But all three phases, you were complementing one another, which hadn't been the case prior.
Now, life would be a lot easier starting the drive inside your own 5 if Joe Judge is the coach, because you're going to call the quarterback sneak. So,
we should mention real quick for the younger people that are listening too, because I don't think we covered this. So the Giants did win the NFC East.
Yes.
When they beat Dallas in the second to last game, and they won home field advantage in the last game against Jacksonville. So again, before we get on to my favorite game, because I still pulled the Viking game out, but I just want to emphasize this season really came out of nowhere for Giants fans, because we were getting excited about the season as they were picking up wins. We got a little worried again right before we're going to push our chips to the middle of the table, and they went on that 5-game winning streak. But to me at least, it was kind of a weird season as a fan, because it was way better than I think any of us anticipated. And you're sitting there at the end of the year and you only have 4 losses. I don't think there's a team out there that would ever say they would shy away from wanting to be 12-4. If you can take 12-4 any year, you take it, and you love your chances. And that's what happened. And all of a sudden the Giants have home field advantage for the playoffs, which was unreal at the time.
Well, when you're working for someone, they say always under promise, over deliver.
Right.
It's the expectations are what kill your joy. So if you're a fan going into every year thinking we're going to be great, odds are you'll be disappointed. That's why it was so easy for you. You had no expectations. Giants are going to suck. Hey, maybe we make the playoffs, and look what we did for you. So, right?
Yeah.
It was that unexpected expectation. All of a sudden, you got a little something you weren't expecting. It was a nice present. It was good, because when you're expecting something great, it rarely happens. So, we underpromised and over-delivered that year.
There you go.
So we're here going, oh my God, we're in the NFC Championship game.
At home.
Please, let's just not get embarrassed. But Larry, John, I don't know if you want to set this up.
Yeah. So, but before we really cover what happened in the actual game, you guys leave the game with Philadelphia. That's your hated division rival. You put them down again for the 3rd time. Boom, they're out. Now you roll in. You're still at home, right? But you're rolling in the NFC Championship game, and for the bulk of the NFL, for those who fans of other teams, the Giants being at home, they were the afterthought of this game. The Vikings are rolling in. Dante Culpepper, Chris Carter. You've got Randy Moss. It's a team of and they were really braggadocious about what they were and really what they thought they were going to do. What was the Giants' mindset heading into that game?
It was back. I remember very well. It was back to, we just got this next game. Let's just get out and see what we got. We just did our routine. We just stayed the course. It was like, all right, practice every day. Yeah, we had our same meeting, got ready, on Friday, had our beers and our pizza. There was no change. And that was a big part of it too, going into the playoffs. We talk with guys throughout those weeks is guys who have done a lot of playoff games, myself being one of them. It's you do not change anything. You keep out of the rhythm is the number one killer for a team. That's why the Super Bowl is so hard on so many teams. It changes your rhythm. Okay, you go from having 1 week to 2 weeks. You go from practicing and having your own time to people in your face all the time.
Right.
That rhythm, the game even changes, because now you got a longer warm up. Then you sit forever for the anthem, and then you've got the halftime show takes forever. So it's not an easy game to win. That's why I have a lot of respect for Super Bowl winners, because it really gets you out of your rhythm. It gets you out of that same thing you've always done. So we were very much cognizant of staying in with them, doing what we always do. We're going to be in this game. And we knew our defense was good. I don't think we had any questions about that. Did we think they would be that good and that locked down? I don't think so. But there's another side of that too, that people don't talk about, is that defense of theirs. We came out, and you can set it up how you like, but we came out, we scored.
Right.
I believe that was Hilliard on that first. I think it was Hilliard. Or
Yes.
maybe it was
Yep.
that was Hilliard.
It was Hilliard.
Then we get the ball back. and we get Camella.
Yep.
Right.
We get the ball back, and it's Toomer. But the thing was, we were actually giggling in the huddle after the second touchdown going on the next drive because their defense hadn't changed one bit.
Oh, wow.
It's almost as if they thought it was a fluke we had scored.
Right.
They hadn't changed. We're looking at the same thing, just giggling. Okay, here we go. Touchdown, score, pass, touchdown, run, pass, touchdown. It was just like, are they ever going to switch this defense up? Because I almost felt like they didn't feel like we could beat them with our offense in spite of the fact we were beating them with our offense, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Almost like, no, it's just fluke. They're not doing this to us. We're going to stay the course. Like, you should probably adjust.
When you gave a lot of credit to the defense, and I don't want to take anything away from the defense, but again, because I shut them out. But to me, the story of that game was still the offense. It was like one of my favorite lines of the telecast from John Madden when he goes, "Kerry Collins, where the heck did this come from?" And so after the Camella touchdown, my dad, who's Mr. Pessimist Giants fan, he calls me. He goes, "Are you watching this shit?" He said, "Can you believe this?" And I'm like, "Dad, I got to go." I mean, because Larry and I were talking about before you came on, we were still a little bit. You say you were laughing in the huddle about this. As Giants fans, we still had remembered the '97 playoff game against the Vikings where they had come back. So we didn't really feel as fans, some of us, until it was halftime, until Hilliard scored right before halftime, because we knew they had those weapons. But it was unbelievable how it didn't matter. It just didn't matter with you guys on offense. You just went up and down the field, and you guys could have put more points on them. You guys got into the red zone a couple of times and didn't punt it in, or it would have even been worse than that. So
we purposely slowed down scoring to hold the clock and give our defense rest towards the end. We were up. It was up so many points that you're like, okay, they'd have to score, every possession, in like this unbelievable, almost like the Bills did of the greatest comeback, but even more so. We had time in that game.
Right.
We realized there's just no time for them. Let's just eat the clock, and we could put more on them, but why? Let's get our, let's just run our plays and eat clock and speed this game up. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here healthy while we can.
And Larry, Glenn just set you up on your 13 minutes.
He did. That was very generous. Early in the fourth quarter, I think it was Seahorn made an interception. You guys took over the ball. It was 12 minutes and 53 seconds. It was 19 plays, and you guys closed out the game. Going back to what Collins said after week 2, helping out the defense and keeping them off the field. Have you ever been a part of a 19-play, 13-minute clock-killing drive? And I'm really curious, what was the chatter like on the field? You were talking about the Vikings coming out with the same defense, not adjusting. When you guys are lining up against the Vikings, what were the Viking players saying as this is going on and you're just devouring the fourth quarter?
There was a lot of, there's some real players on that defense, guys I respect highly. But they, at a certain point, they're just shaking their head, like almost as if they were so ill prepared for the game. And I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know if that was the players. I don't know what it was, but they felt like almost like they had never seen our offense before. We didn't do anything crazy new. Yeah, we had done some things, but again, when I go back to that, 4-week deal, you're putting in stuff to keep people off balance, but we executed really well. We just really executed well. And I don't know that maybe they didn't have the horses. Maybe they didn't have the coaching staff. I don't know what it was, but the guys on that defense who I respect quite a bit, they were a little bit in shock. Like, they couldn't believe it.
You have to. Well, I was just going to say, you have to think, right? Minnesota walked into that game based on things that they had said. Chris Carter, he talked a lot back in the day, and then some of the things that they said, him and Moss and stuff, they were really confident of what they would do to the Giants defense. It's almost like the Minnesota Vikings defense against the Giants offense. No one even thought about that part of the game. It was the Giants defense being matched up against a very superior Minnesota offense. How was that going to play out? And what I like, and you kind of mentioned slowing it down, but you didn't slow it down until you got to a point. And I think it's things that I've seen some other teams do even today. they pull their foot off the gas a little too early. Like what's working, they're like, okay, well now we're going to get a little conservative. What got you there was you guys were picking them apart. You want to hit Jared Vicious in the back of the end zone, you hit Jared Vicious in the back of the end zone. You kept going after them, and I think they had no answer for that. And it shocked them because I think they expected at some point the Giants would get into the Tiki, Barber, Ron Dane, Joe Montgomery, whatever. We would just slow it down and run, and you didn't do that.
No, and it's funny you say that. I, as an analyst, and when I do games, I constantly tell people this: if you're talking about this offense versus this defense, that is going to be the battle. But if they're both very good, it's probably going to be a wash. You really then have to look at the other two sides plus special teams. That's where the game's going to be won. So you have to go, all right, this defense is amazing. This offense is amazing. Who's going to win? No, let's take a look at the defense and offense the other side. And that's where the battle is going to be won. And that's something I still do as an analyst. I still try to tell people that. If you remember, it's like it's plus, minus, you start going through it. And they negate each other when you have two strong ones like that. Then you have to go down and figure out the other side of the equation and go, all right. And the fact was their defense was very good at Minnesota based on the fact their offense could score.
Right.
Our defense was very good based on the fact that we gave them time to be very good.
Right.
And to dominate. They didn't get tired towards the end because we did what we needed to do, because we pulled our weight. So therefore, when the game time came, they were fresh the entire game. Our defense was fresh. And that offense didn't have an answer for a fresh Giants defense.
Well, I also think that going into the game, Amani Toomer was really banged up. I don't think he practiced for much of the week. And then I think he practiced on Friday, but didn't look good. And so he comes out and he catches two passes right off the bat before the Hilliard touchdown. And so, because we didn't know if he was, as fans, we didn't really know if he was going to play, and if he was going to play, how effective he was going to be. And it kind of sort of what piggybacking on what John said, after the Camella touchdown, you guys didn't let up. And I thought one of the big plays that doesn't get enough attention that told me that you guys were just going to throw was the Ron Dixon deep pass that was also in the first half. And I don't know if that ended up leading to a touchdown. It might have been just a field goal, but it was like, guess what, Minnesota? We're not stopping. We're continuing to throw. And I don't think you guys let up with the throwing until late in the second half, and then Tiki started going too. I think there was one big run with Tiki, Barber and off of Ron Stone's direction. I think there, but they looked discombobulated. The Vikings did. They looked like they did not expect what you guys did to them. And that's what, to this day, I tell you what, there are a number of games I have that I'll always put on as an old Giants fan, and that still is one of my favorite games to put on, especially just even the first few minutes of that game, because the crowd's going crazy, the towels are going like this, and it's 14-0 before the Vikings even are on offense. And the game's not over, but man, what an advantage that was. So it was great.
Yeah, there was so many great things about that game, and like you said, the fans. When you go play the Giants, generally it's pretty quiet. It's not the loudest stadium. You got a lot of corporate people and all that. Right. I would not say it about that day. Those two playoff games were so raucous and so loud and so unbelievable that you got the sense of who Giants fans were. It was a lot of fun.
Before talking about the game itself, I'm gonna ask you a pretty direct question. I know what I think. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think I know what you're going to say for you, but I'm more thinking the overall team, because you had a very big mix, right? You and Lomas and the offensive line, a lot of veterans. You had a lot of young guys on that team too, though. There were a lot of guys who hadn't seen success. You had a lot of success. You were with championship teams with Buffalo. You know what it takes to be a winning team. Looking back on it now, is there ever a feeling that maybe some of the guys on the team that really the championship game kind of was a Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl was a little bit more of a letdown? Like the second everything went your way and it was so good against Minnesota, so dominant, that facing a much different opponent in Baltimore, the wind, maybe he came out of the sails emotionally beforehand?
You know what? I won't say beforehand. I think the Super Bowls have a way of taking emotion and heightening it. And I say this because 2 of the Super Bowls I was in resulted because players allow the momentum or the emotion to drain them if it doesn't go their way. And I really tried hard to talk to guys on the sideline saying, hey, it's a setback. Let's just keep plugging along, going our way. But there's a shutdown at some point where they don't want to hear it. They're so distraught over the course of a play or a call or a mishap that they just lose all ability to stay on the edge and to play with that edge. And you see it all the time in Super Bowls. The emotion of that game is so high, the adrenaline is so high. If it goes against you, younger players lack the ability to maintain balance at that point. And it's not just younger players; it's guys who haven't been in big games before. You got if you've been in a lot of big games, you realize that's going to happen.
Sure.
Right.
If you haven't, it's new to you, and I think it was new to a lot of guys. And so I won't say it was before, and I don't think that at all. But I do think that when we got setbacks, it hurt us. It definitely hurt us emotionally.
Yeah, there was a really interesting interview with Amani Toomer fairly recently where he said, he was really frank about this. He said, and again, I don't think this would have been you, because again, given your veteran status and what you've seen up to that time. He said the offense was distracted going into that game over silly, stupid things. He said they were bothered by the fact that the defense had gotten announced in the NFC Championship game, so they expected the offense to be announced coming out of the tunnel in the Super Bowl. And when it was the defense again, he said that some of the guys on offense, including himself, so he was pointing a finger at himself, and he said if he could go back and, he said he was just immature. He said things like that should bothered some of the guys on offense, and it shouldn't have. And he said he took that and he learned. And that's one of the things that fueled him in 2007 when he won a Super Bowl. He learned that lesson. But did you get a sense that some of your teammates, and again, I'm not trying to ask you to point fingers at people, did you get a sense that the team was a little bit distracted by silly things, like Amani said?
Because you're always going to have that at Super Bowls, guys. Whether it's hey, look, there's a superstar on the sideline. But I do remember what he's talking about. I remember there were some guys, and I'm like, I just shook my hand and said, hey, this is the least of your problems, babe. Let's go. We got a game to go.
Right.
And there were some guys, yeah, but you know what? You just hope to get them out of it in the moment, get them ready to play. And at that point, you got your mind's locked in. So it really, I most remember having the biggest problem with guys becoming very me people when things went against us instead of becoming team people. When things go against you is when you really have to become a team. You have to tighten up. Right. You got to get the shields close. Individual warriors get killed out in the open field. You got to get close. You got to, you got to get yourself. Everybody's got to be working together, and that's when I noticed it. Things probably most often. If I had to pick 2 plays in that game, it'd be the Jesse Armstead interception that was brought back, which was an absolute horrific.
I was going to bring that up.
The phantom holding call.
Yeah. And the thing was, we knew going in, we had to keep it within 1 score with this team. We could not allow them to get too far ahead. That defense of theirs was too good.
Right.
We knew that. We knew our defense was great, but we knew we would have turnovers. We would have problems if we were too far. So that really hurt us because we were going to tie the game.
Right.
That would have been a tying play, and instead they get a field goal. Now they're up 2 scores. So we're pressing. Yeah, we get the return. They get the return, but we're status quo. We're pressing. We're chasing, and that's where it all goes downhill. But you see a play like that where you see the gas come out of some guys. You see the light out of their eye. You're like, hey, but you're too into and you might say something to some guys, and I did. I'm not naming names, but that's when you see the me come out. It's like, can't have any me's. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why that play was such a downer too was, and again, that was a really great defense that the Ravens had. And that's not taking anything away from them. They were really darn good. Sure. And I respect Trent Dilfer, but he was considered the weak link of that team. and to have him throw a pick six and make the game 7-7, and then he has to come immediately back on the field, you could have had a different ball game at that spot. So I'm not one of these guys. I don't want to sound like an old Washington Redskins fan that says the official game. But I do think it would have been a different game. Maybe not same outcome. I don't know, but I would have liked to have seen how that game progressed had it been 7-7 and Trent's got to come back out on the field at that point.
Well, unlike any other sport, Eric and Larry and John, unlike any other sport, every decision on a football field is made due to the previous decisions. It's not like basketball. It's not like baseball. Baseball is probably a little more strategic, but football, those have a bad call or a bad an interception, a fumble, getting burned deep on defense. Those spark the next play, and that next play doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because of that last play. So I think football is the one you really can say, that changed the course. Like a bad call by a ref at the wrong time can absolutely, I don't care if it's in the first quarter, can change the rest of the game. It's the butterfly effect, right?
Sure.
One call changes everything. And maybe it goes the same way. Maybe it doesn't. And that's the great unknown about football, and probably why so many people like it still, because every play does matter. Every possession matters. You can watch a basketball game, get me the last 2 minutes, and I'll watch the last 2 minutes while I'm having 9 beers because it takes 3 hours to watch, and none of it mattered, right? All that mattered was those last 2 minutes. But football matters from start to finish, the whole thing, and that's what that's why it's awesome. And so I don't think you're wrong. I wouldn't call you some crazy guy. It's true. You have to look at the what ifs.
Right. And when you
I don't know you well enough, Eric.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, when you look back at the 2000 season, right? We know we could talk about the Super Bowl more, but we know what happened.
Yeah.
But you look at the totality of the season. What are you most proud of for that season? What brings you the most? And when you look back and say, you know what, that was really good.
Expectations, changing people's expectations of what can happen, and knowing that I had a direct hand in it, knowing that I came in, I was asked to do a job, I did the job and got one game short of doing it to perfection in 1 year. Not 2, not 5, not 10, but in 1 year, I got close to having perfection in the job I was asked to do.
There's an interesting thing, and the other two guys are going to now cringe because we did discuss this, but I'm talking to you enough right now that I think you're going to look at it the way I want to present it. You actually are in a very small group of people that have played in, unfortunately didn't win, 5 Super Bowls. How do you, when you look back on that though, what forget the wins and losses about that. You were in 5 Super Bowls. What does that mean to you as far as your career goes? If someone were to ask you, what does that mean to you, Glenn, about being 5 Super Bowl teams?
It means I was a part of 5 great teams. So too often we look at someone who loses the big game as the loser.
Right.
Well, there were 30 other teams that were losers. We just lost that game. So what I often say when people say, well, how's it, what's it like to lose 5 Super Bowls? Well, I always just say, you know how you got to lose 5 Super Bowls? You got to play in 5 Super Bowls. I played in 5. I mean, I got there. I was an integral part of 5 teams that got there. I'm not bitter at all. I won't be bitter. Hey, we lost the game. That's why you play them, right? But to understand, and I will never feel bad about it. Would I rather won one? Yeah, but if I have to win one to not have all 5, I don't know that I do that. The teams, the coaches, the players, the camaraderie, the fans, the involvement of those years is a much bigger thing than just the sum of its parts. That's an incredible thing to have in your life, and it was good for me.
Nice.
I have Glenn. I have a really good friend at work. Her name is Krista. She's from Western New York, and she's part of the Bills Mafia. She wears a Bills hat to work every day, and she grew up with you guys, and your teams, and she may have had a crush on Jim Kelly. I don't know, but she remembers your teams and those, in the early 90s. She's the fan she is today because of you guys, and I know that, even though you guys didn't win those Super Bowls, she still is a massive Bills fan because of you guys, and she appreciates you.
Oh, that's great. The thing is, I'm often asked, what team do I associate with? I don't. I root for my friends. There's like Dan Campbell, great guy. Sean Payton, people I really like. Mike Solari, who's a longtime offensive line coach. He was my line coach at Kansas City. He's a friend still. I root for him. Aaron Cromer, the Bills offensive line coach, who's now become emeritus. The people like that I root for. My wife and all 4 kids are giant Bills fans. My wife's from Buffalo. I did go to college with her in Arizona, but she's from Buffalo. But I don't, and my wife would even tell you, and she tells people this, if I identify with one team, it's probably the Giants, because I was treated so well by Mr. Mara and the Mara family and the Tisch family, for that matter, pardon me, that I have never forgotten what they did for me and how they brought me in and what they asked me to do and how I did it and how they treated me. I loved Lamar Hunt, a fantastic gentleman who could not have been nicer. As a matter of fact, that when he didn't want me to leave Kansas City to go to New York. There was a coaching decision. I was a free agent. When we beat the Eagles on that Monday morning, there was a basket at my locker full of some of the finest wines, because he knew I was a wine guy, and a handwritten letter from him hoping that I got it. Wow. Class act. Absolute class act. So I was part of great teams, but I root for friends, not teams anymore, just my friends out there. And I do love the Giants and the Giants fans. Where I spend my summers in upstate New York, when I was playing for the Bills, they were all Giants fans. And now, even when I was with the Giants, they were still Giants fans. Now it's all Bills fans. Bills have taken over central New York. You guys are familiar where the Finger Lakes are.
Yeah.
That's where I have a lake house up there. I spend my summers up there. So now it's all Bills Mafia up there. The whole place is Bills Mafia.
My folks are up in Utica, so yeah.
Oh, there you go. So you know the area somewhat.
Yeah.
I went to college outside Rochester, so I was the only Giants fan in my house during Super Bowl 25. So
well, I know that my a dear friend of mine, his mother, when I was with the Bills and Chiefs, that was great. But when I got to the Giants, she goes, "Well, I'm glad to see you." She, in her mind, Bills and Chiefs weren't real teams. Giants were a real team. She was old enough to remember when there was no AFL, so she thought you're on an NFL team now. When I got to the Giants, Central New York, they were old school Giants fans up there for years and years.
You made it out of the minor leagues.
Yeah, exactly. That's how she felt.
It's also no surprise that your wife wanted to get out of Buffalo and go to Arizona, given the weather.
The thing was, so she was a synchronized swimmer and was recruited by like Ohio State and Michigan. Her sister swam at Michigan, and Arizona. She was 17, graduating, and they recruited her. She took a trip out from Buffalo in the winter and saw snow on the mountains, palm trees, and sun, and said, "I'm going there." And I met her in college and just happened to get drafted by the Buffalo Bills.
That's right. And you also confirmed something that one of the people on my website said today. They said, ask Glenn about wine. He's a big wine guy. So you did confirm that. So we've got that.
Still a wine guy.
Yeah.
Still love it. I've slowed down. I don't collect anymore. I've sold a lot of wines. Mainly only because I'm the only person that I know that loves wine like I do. So I don't partake or buy as much because I don't have anybody to enjoy it with.
All right.
Got you. So we've kept you on for quite a bit. So I do want to.
One last question.
You can absolutely.
No worries, guys.
One last question, because you're going to know where I'm going to go with this when I give you the guy's handle on the website. Gentleman goes by the name of Lamb Booth Special. So, following year 2001, I just quick reaction when you're on the field and Ron Dixon's running down the sideline after getting the lateral from Tiki. Did you think that had a chance? I mean, were you guys going, "Oh my God, this is going to work"?
To tell you the truth, I don't know what I was thinking in the moment. I don't even know if I was on. I might have been just sitting down on the bench, seeing what's going on. I don't remember it all that well. I'll tell you the truth. Isn't that awful? God darn.
It didn't score, so I don't know. It doesn't really.
Maybe that's why I didn't remember anything.
Close. No, you were on the field. I actually watched the play today, and you're at left guard. So I think you are. Yeah, you're.
I got hit in the head a lot in my career. I will tell you, it's a funny thing. If 20 years ago, I can remember every game, every play, and what the next play was and all that.
Right.
I don't remember any of that anymore. I remember the feeling of games and friends and stuff like that, but Yeah, I don't remember much as far as if I watch a play, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking and who it was and why. But I have to be. That's got to bump into my memory first now.
No,
I have to make room for other things.
There you go.
Your answer is exactly what Rich Soyberg told us. He said there are things. The exact, almost word for word, what you just said. Richie told us too. He said there's some things I remember, some things I don't. But so.
So with that, I guess I'll wrap it up real quick with this. You've played with a number of good quarterbacks, and I don't want you to pick who's, because it doesn't really matter. But give me just a sense of the guys, the differences between them. You played with Jim Kelly, Kerry Collins to the Super Bowl. I mean, just your thoughts of the quarterbacks you played with, and kind of what they brought to the different teams. Starting with Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly brought inner toughness. He's just that guy who. And believe it or not, so I won't insult him by saying this. I know Jim, when I knew him, not a well-read guy. You wouldn't go, oh, he's really smart. Put him on a football field, and he's the smartest guy on the field. He understood the game of football better than anybody, and he knew he was a field general. He was one of the last guys. He's calling all of his own plays. He's getting a little input from the sidelines. Most everything he's calling, man, and he's rolling with it. So phenomenal football mind, tough as hell. Just got beat up towards the end. That's everybody does. So phenomenal player, absolutely phenomenal player. I played with Elvis Gerback, great arm, unbelievable arm, good head. I don't know that he loved the game, and that was probably his downfall. Still friends with him. He and my wife and his wife are still close, but yeah, it's I don't know that he loved the game. And Rich Gannon was one of our quarterbacks at Kansas City, and Rich was unbelievable good. He was so agile in the pocket, throwing the ball down the field, unbelievable pocket presence, leadership. He had the tools some guys have, but made the most of them and really deserves a better place in the history of the game than he has. And then Kerry Collins, what can you say? Resilient as can be, fought his demons and beat them. Funny, really funny human being when you're around him. A good team guy, great arm strength, unbelievable arm strength, and strong. A big guy. Most people don't realize how big he was. He was a bigger, stronger guy. Really, I love playing with Kerry, and I still communicate a little bit over. Through social media, we talk a little bit here and there, and then let's not forget on that same team we had Jason Garrett. One of my favorite people that I ever played with. One of my favorite teammates ever. Just an incredible human being. And I actually played with both of his brothers in the NFL. So I played with all three of those guys at one point in my life. And Jason, though, as I said, one of my favorite teammates of all time, smart as a whip. You knew that guy was going to be a coach from day one. He just who he was. His dad was. He is. His brother is. You saw that with him. He just got the game. He got the game on a different level. He really did. If he had more tools, he would have been incredible.
Kind of a weird, interesting connection there is if rest his soul, Tony Saragusa doesn't kind of cheap shot Rich Gannon. You guys very well could have been playing the Raiders. They were well into that game. That when Gannon got hurt, that changed everything. Because that game, if I remember correctly, that was on the road. That was in Oakland, I believe.
It was in Oakland. Yep.
Yeah. So when Saragusa drove him into the ground, which is the rule they ultimately changed later on, you can't drive the quarterbacks into the ground. That separated his shoulder. He's done. And they go on and win. If the Raiders win that game, you're playing against him in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we are. I played against him, and probably would have liked our chances better against the Raiders too. But hey, never underestimate the weight of Goose landing on top of you. Yeah, people. Tony and I came out the same year, and we played against each other. He was with Indy when I was with Buffalo. I up until. Honestly, maybe 2 years before his passing, we talked all the time because he used to do games. He used to do the Fox stuff, and I did all the post games for the Cardinals, and I was always on the road at some game anyways. And so Goose and I got to know each other real well over the years. And Don way too soon, man. The guy was a one of a kind. But yeah, you don't want him landing on you. He could land on a cow and hurt a cow. I mean,
right. He was a big man.
I swear this is my last question. I don't know if Larry's got a last question too. My last question is you've mentioned a lot of names. One guy that's kind of we haven't talked about at all is Jim Fossil. I know some people really liked him. Some people weren't crazy about him. You haven't really talked about him that much. What were your views on Jim?
I love Jim. I got to know Jim initially because my junior college coach had played at Utah, and Jim Fossil was the head coach at Utah. And so I went out there when I was in junior college to see my junior college coach who was finishing his degree and meet a bunch of his teammates who were linemen or ex-linemen at Utah, a lot of NFL guys. And Fossil was recruiting me, and they stopped recruiting me. And there had been a mistake, and it's so far, no one's ever going to fall back on this, but there was a problem with my junior college transcripts in that, your clock starts when you become a full-time student. Well, they and a bunch of other schools thought my clock had started the previous year. So I was only going to be a 1-for-1 JC guy coming into a program. And I can see how they thought that. I had dropped a class, but apparently it wasn't the guy, the teacher who was supposed to drop it didn't. And so he stopped recruiting me. Now, move forward through the years, I see him here and there. He leaves college, goes to the pros. First thing he says to me when I meet him for dinner with Jim McNally in New York is, Glenn, I remember we were recruiting you at a Golden West, but there was something with your transcripts. How did you ever get eligible?
Oh, wow.
So I told him the story about, he had a great memory.
Yeah.
Well, I told him the story how I got eligible. My junior college head coach said, you need to go see the woman at the front desk. I did. Went back in the back. We got to talk, and she goes, okay, I have to go run an errand, but your film is up right now. So whatever happens to that film, I don't know that it actually happened. So she left. I went in. I erased 1 year of my transcripts. I became eligible. So I got another year. And then really all it was because, and she actually did the homework. The guy said, yeah, he did drop it. I kind of forgot, but it wouldn't have mattered to the NCAA. But It was all on the up and up, other than the fact that I wasn't supposed to do what I did, but I did. I got the extra year.
Of course, now you can get paid to play in college.
And junior college doesn't count. Now junior college doesn't count against you for your eligibility. I still got 3 years eligibility right now.
You got one extra school.
Yes, I got 2.
We're just going to let the transfer portal know.
Yeah.
We got a guy who's
eligible.
So, Larry, if you want to, one last thing, and I want to let Glenn go, and we'll close.
Sure. Awesome. Super quick. So, if you look at this background behind me, I took this picture from my seat to Giant Stadium from the Minnesota game. This is the 2-minute warning, and it's that funky grass field that was on that weird tray system. It was the first year of a 3-year experiment. I'm really curious because there's a lot of talk about this on Big Blue Interactive in the forum. I know when you played with the Bills, it was still artificial surface at Rich Stadium. And when you were at Kansas City, that was still artificial turf. It wasn't grass yet, right? So what did you think of this new grass field at Giant Stadium? And do you have any preference, any strong feelings with regards to playing on an artificial surface versus a grass field?
So, yes, I will tell you this. I had only played on artificial turf when I got to college. Like my first college game was on it, and I played a few on it. We played on grass at Arizona. I got to the Bills, and we had that old turf. It had been installed in like 1974. I mean, it's so old. One whole side of the field laid down. So if you ran that way when it was wet, you were slipping. So it was just awful, and it was painful. You got beat up on that stuff, and you don't realize it until you start getting to your 5th, 6th year in the league, and you're just dying. You're so sore and hurt all the time. I got to Kansas City, and they had great grass. Remember, that was Toomer, and that was the group there that did all the Super Bowls. Phenomenal surface. When I got to Kansas City, when I got to New York and they had that grass, I absolutely loved that field. And I know that some guys bitch, but it was soft. It gave. Yeah, you could tell it was on tray because the way when you ran, you could feel it. You could hear it almost like bouncing. But I loved it. I hate turf. I never want to play on. I've coached on turf. I've played on it. I will defy you right now or any person to go stand for 3 hours on turf versus standing 3 hours on grass and see how your back and knees feel after 3 hours of just standing and walking around, not even playing.
Yeah.
Coaches who coach on that, they talk about in your hips. I mean, I've coached on it, and your hips and back are screaming after 3 hours compared to grass. It's just that grass has that deadening. I would liken it to this. Turf is like a spring mattress and grass is like a Tempur-Pedic, a memory foam. Grass just gives, it feels better. It just dissipates the shock. All that happens. So I absolutely hate turf. I would never like to see, I know that teams want to go to it. It's very economical. You put it in once, you keep care of it a little bit, and it lasts forever. It sucks. Okay. It's awful. It's the worst serve. And wide receivers, running backs love it. They can cut. Yeah. Well, they can also get hit a lot harder too, because the guy doesn't have to worry about it. So no, I hate it. I'm a grass guy all the way. I would never want to play on that stuff.
That being said, I will finish this. I'm going to finish it up there. We did get a question in chat, and I thought it was a good one, so I will ask you. The question is coming from one of our guys over across the pond, as they say, one of our Italian mates. Who is the toughest in their prime and in your prime? Who was the toughest defensive lineman you ever had to go up against?
Howie Long.
Oh,
Howie Long.
All right.
Well, granted, I was younger my first few years, but I was in guard. I hadn't played a lot of guard. I'd always played tackle, but I was in guard. Howie was so good off the snap and had the strength to throw you around like Reggie White. So he had better get off than just about any D lineman I've ever seen. And he had the strength to throw you. And he had a motor that never quit. There was never a play off for Howie. And that type of thing kills you. A close second is Kevin Green. Same thing. Motor guys kill you. That being said, I practiced against the best of all time, and that's Bruce Smith. And I played against Bruce Smith. The best of all time is Bruce Smith, and it's not a question in my mind. Michael Strahan's phenomenal, and I'm not saying it because he was my teammate. I played against him too when he was really young. I remember the first time I went against him when he was really young. I went, "Who the hell is this guy? Where did he come from?
Right.
This guy's an animal over here." And there's certain guys like that. And the thing about football is it's matchups, right? It's styles. It's kind of the styles make fights. There's all pro guys I went against I didn't think were all that great. And there's guys that you've never heard of that threw me around like I was a rag doll. And it's just because of the style of how they played. So Howie Long by far, because of all the things I mentioned. But that's only because I didn't play enough against Bruce in his prime, but I know Bruce is the best from everything I saw in practice. I saw as a teammate, and when I saw across the field from him, because as I said, I played against Dolman, I played against Dent, I played against Greg Townsend, you name it, I played against him. And the 90s were that time, and Bruce is head and shoulders. He's that good.
Man. Well, this has been awesome. Glad. Appreciate it. Yeah. We went longer. Damn it! Every time I say we're going to go shorter, we go. Yeah.
Well, see, I would have said we can go more than an hour, but you didn't tell me beers were involved. Once you said, let's go.
The last time we went 2.5, and I was ready for another hour. I got more beer in the fridge.
You weren't going to do that to him.
No. So So again, appreciate it, Glenn. Love to catch up with you down the road. Pick your brain. This was awesome. Thank you for the insight on what was really, while it didn't finish the ultimate way, it was probably one of the more magical seasons that we can remember with a group. The 80s teams, you kind of LT, Banks, Sims, all those guys, they were built to win. Once they got to a certain point, you kind of expected, and it was when we had some letdowns. This team kind of came out of nowhere. It was that rejuvenation after the surprise of 97. And so just really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again down the road.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you very much, Eric, Larry, John. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And, love reminiscing, and call me anytime you like.
I appreciate it. All right, Glenn. Thank you, and have a great night.
Go Big Blue.
All right, thank you. Go Big Blue. I love it, guys. That was awesome. To the folks in chat, those who weren't in chat tonight, you missed it, but you'll catch it on the recording. But that was a lot of fun. Glenn is just so insightful, so just so much fun.
And he gave honest answers. He gave I thought he was very. I mean, there's no reason for him not to be, but I thought he was very, frank, honest answers. Which I liked some of his answers with the Super Bowl in particular, though, about what we were all wondering about with that call. Obviously he brought up the fact that he wasn't going to name names, but I think that call affected some people on the team. And I can see
prior to that, when he was talking about big game experience and when something goes against you and maintaining that edge, as he's discussing that, I'm having flashbacks of Jesse Armstead running back that interception, and I want to ask the question, but then he ended up mentioning it himself. But I I'm not saying the Giants would have won the game, but I think it would have been very, very, very different. And he even said the Ravens were not a team that you wanted to chase.
And that's what I thought that was a really interesting comment that Larry is exactly what you just said is he mentioned Chase a number of times during that answer. And they and it kind of felt like that at the game, like when we get the kickoff return and they get the kickoff return. I think there was a holding penalty on their kickoff return that didn't get called too.
Yeah.
So it was like,
It just wasn't the Giants' day. It just wasn't our day. And
there was a second piece to what he said with that particular thing that I think is even more insightful and more applicable to what we've dealt with over the last 6 years. What he said was games are based on the play before. Like that play before dictates what happens, right? And that changes everything, right? Something this and that occurs, but it also has a mental piece. So let's stick with this for just a second. If that play stands, right, the pressure is on the Ravens. You mentioned it, Eric. It's not just Dilfer, though, because Dilfer is going to be on himself. But guess what? So is that great Ravens defense. They're going to be like, Jesus Christ, dude, we're holding these guys down, and you don't turn it over, right? And now the pressure's on. Field position changes all of a sudden. That gives the Giants offense some breathing room. Now, even if we don't do anything and we go to halftime, this game is now still up in the air. Fast forward to the last 6 years, right? This is the thing that we have said over and over again. It's the thing that, Eric, you bring up about when we talk about Jackson Dart, who has not seen the field one time yet in an NFL game. Right. But there's something about the aura, the moxie of the guy that we see that's just different than what we had. Because with Daniel Jones, the Giants' mental capacity was one bad play away from going, oh, God, and that deflation of the balloon, that just bringing the air right out of the team that we are talking about that happened in the Super Bowl, because it did. When you took that play away, that was like, oh, crap, there goes everything. When things would happen with Jones, the Giants had no momentum anymore. Everything had to be perfect in order to win, and when it wasn't, you lose. And that's just something I'm really glad he brought that up, because you see what it takes to be the answer about the Super Bowls. I thought was even a better one to be part. And I wasn't going to bring it up. We talked about not doing it, but
when you started going, I'm like, oh, John, don't.
But he opened the door the way the way he talked about things. I was like, you know what? He'll take this the way it's meant to be.
And he did.
The consistency that you have to have, the mental fortitude, because we talk about when you lose you win a Super Bowl, it's really hard that next year to kind of get back up again. It's got to be even harder to lose one, to get all the way there, and you're with one of 32 other teams. Mentally, everybody else, that's how they see it. His point was there were 30 teams that weren't even in this game.
Right.
But that's hard but to do it 5 times, 4 in a row with Buffalo, that there's a stamina piece there that I think history will look back on the Bills with a little bit more gratitude or a little bit more praise to be able to pull that together.
Yeah, I think that's true. And when you look at those 4 Bills teams, every year in the AFC Championship game, they beat a different team. The first year it was the Raiders. One year it was the Dolphins. One year it was the Chiefs. Every year there was one year it was the Denver Broncos.
Right.
The AFC was throwing a different challenge at them every year, and they beat them every year.
And not only that, but look at the playoff results in their first Super Bowl run. It was like I don't forget what the cumulative score was, but it was like 80 to 14.
Well, they annihilated the Raiders. The Giants beat the Vikings. Like
51-3, right? That was 51-3. Yeah.
Larry wrote a series of excellent articles for Big Blue Interactive. Visit there if you haven't been there. Called the
best history section on the internet about the Giants.
It's written by Larry, and he wrote a series of things like the missing rings articles, which was taken from, I think NFL Films had their missing rings. And look, this was all about the New York Giants 2000 season. that New York Giants 2000 team could not hold a candle to those Super Bowl Buffalo teams that got to the Super Bowl. That team, that Buffalo Bills team that went to 4 straight Super Bowls, I think will go down in history as like the probably the best team that didn't have a ring, because they were,
other than maybe like the 1969 Minnesota Vikings, who were phenomenal.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That was when the NFC East was the NFC Beast. Every year it was the Giants, it was the Redskins, and then it was Dallas back to back. It's not like they were facing nobodies.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals, people forget they were in the
They were
division.
decent. They weren't doormats. They were pretty good.
You had Roy Green, you had JT Smith. I mean, you had Neil Lomax, you had Stump Mitchell, you had Otis Anderson before he came to the Giants. I mean, they were, and on the offensive line, you had Louis Sharp at left tackle, who he and LT had lots of battles. They were not a doormat team per se, and those teams, if you think about it, right? If it wasn't the 49ers, it was somebody from the East. The only other option was the Bears in '85.
Well,
and they are an anomaly.
Well, let's also remember how, and I hate saying this, because I don't like this team. Let's just remember how good the Dallas Cowboy teams were that beat those Bill teams. I mean, they were that offensive line on the Dallas Cowboys, and that team that Jimmy Johnson built was. I mean, that we're lucky they only won 2 Super Bowls.
Thank you, Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, that was some team. So he.
Well, and if Mark Jackson could catch a pass late in that game in the end of '93, we might have been talking about a whole different scenario.
That's a missing rings team that I haven't written about. The '93 Giants. They
weren't that good. They weren't.
They were good enough. They were good enough, because if they beat Dallas, and I was at that game,
right,
they would have had a week off, and then Dallas would have played the wild card game, and they would have had to come back to New York for the divisional game. And the Cowboys said in the paper they were so grateful they won that game because they wanted no part of the Giants. The Giants beat them up physically. They didn't want to come, and they would have to play the no week off. And the Giants got screwed by the NFL after they played the wild card game. They had a short week. They had to fly to San Francisco and play on Saturday. They were set up to lose.
That might be one of the worst games I've ever seen. That Giants 49ers.
Well, they were so spent.
Yeah.
To beat the Vikings was barely good enough. But think about this though, right? If the Giants beat the Cowboys in that game, there's no way Emmitt Smith is going to be able to be much of anything. He played with the shoulder so bad. He gutted it out, but with 1 week's rest, and we all know adrenaline gets you through, but those next 3 or 4 days, that dude would have been a hurt unit going into a wild card. Yeah.
No, it would have been, the playoffs would have been completely different. Different.
Dan Reeves played that way too safe at the end of that game too.
Well, that's a whole other argument.
Yeah.
But, had the Giants pull it off one way or another, I think they could have made it to the Super Bowl. And hey, maybe in that year the Bills get their revenge and they beat the Giants, whatever. I think the Giants could have at least gotten there.
So I think
I sent an article, Larry.
There you go.
Maybe. Coming to you in 2026.
We'll wrap this up a little bit. I'm gonna just to look ahead and a couple other things. One, we've been discussing it. I think we'll discuss a little further a setting of time, but I think the next time we do a season review, I believe we're going to do it on 2007, unless we change our mind. But I'm thinking the 07 season's the season we'll review next. We have next Tuesday. Carl Banks is coming on. We'll have Carl Banks on. And the way I have it set is we're doing it live. So Killer's going to be on live, and I've got a little something for him when we have him on. And then we've got some other stuff we're going to do. We will do another Pour 4, and I think I have it set up already. I just haven't set the time. Obviously, we're gonna play it by ear based on the health of our compatriots here. But we will do a Pour 4, and we're gonna do the 2 giant goofballs are gonna join us for that. I'm gonna set that up, and we'll do the Pour 4 again. So, but we've got all stuff.
How you should surprise Carl Banks. Was it Danny White's wrist he broke? Was it Danny White?
Yes.
You said Danny White, come on. You son of a bitch.
That would be pretty funny. That would be pretty funny. But yeah, it's going to be fun. I've already got a little bit. I'm still trying to get something else for Carl, but I do have one small little thing. Hopefully it'll play the way I want it to. But
don't make him cry.
No, I'll try not to make him cry. But so like, subscribe, appreciate it, and folks, we'll catch you again real soon.